Take a network break. I'm Drew Conry Murray.
I'm Jonna Johnson.
Jonna, we've got some good crunchy like networking news today. So what's on our list?
We've got some scary red alerts, some new switching gear from both Cisco and Juniper, a preview of ThousandEyes traffic insights, and a bunch more.
Right, before we get into that, just a reminder, we have a Tech Bites after today's news. We're going to be talking with Nokia about their event-driven automation, or EDA. That's a network automation platform that aims to help network engineers get predictable, error-free operations so you can keep up with all the change tickets coming your way while ensuring the data center is reliable and performant. So we'll dig into that. And by the way, Packet Pushers has a merch store, so you can get yourself or someone you love a cozy sweatshirt with the Packet Pushers logo or the logo of your favorite podcast. It's this one, right? It's this one. You can see everything on offer, including t-shirts, mugs, hats, and more at store.packetpushers.net. Jonna, over to you for red alerts.
Okay, and I really hope you think Network Break is your favorite podcast.
Oh, even over heavy strategy? Is that where
well,
your loyalty's lay?
On this podcast, that's what I'm going to say.
Well played.
Yes. So basically, first and foremost, of the 1,250 CVEs published in the week ending February 12th, 459 were critical, that is, scoring 9.5 or higher, and of those, a whopping 72 scored a perfect 10.
Yikes.
That is 72 super serious security vulnerabilities. And again, that was 1,250. The number of digits is increasing dramatically on these. It's worth noting.
Yes.
Most of the scary perfect 10 ones have known exploits in use of the wild also. So in other words, these are not hypothetical vulnerabilities. These are actual vulnerabilities that are being exploited. All but two of the 10s are updates on CVEs that were initially published more than a decade ago and are still being actively exploited in the wild.
Oh.
Come on, people,
Really?
don't do this.
10 years? Like I get.
Yeah, right?
Maybe it takes a while to roll out the patches, but 10 years, that is bad.
Yeah. Of the newest discovered, this week we're highlighting CVE 2025-21415, which warns that an authentication bypass on Azure AI Face Service allows an authorized attacker to elevate privileges over a network. By the way, that doesn't mean an attacker who has been authorized to attack. That means somebody with authority and who decides to attack can elevate privileges over a network. Microsoft now says the threat has been fully mitigated. No user action required for this one. But what about the next one? This highlights the need for secure coding practices in programs and products making use of AI APIs and the need for zero trust approaches to the networks and to the services themselves. We got a bunch of links in the show notes if you want to read more on that.
And I'll just note, talking about API security, if you're a subscriber to the Human Infrastructure newsletter, I linked to an article. Somebody's walking through how to protect your APIs using Microsoft authentication capabilities with Entra, assuming you're in Azure. But I think the larger point is APIs are now becoming an attack vector. So you need to be protecting them. That includes making sure you've got sufficient authorization and access control on what the APIs are doing.
Which also means you have to have solid API management in place, which is a whole different discussion, but yes.
Yes.
Sorry, there's a huge universe of worry out there if you haven't been paying attention to your APIs. But by the way, since we're in the business of generating more worry at this point in the show, Shadow Server reports 2.8 million node brute force attack. The threat monitoring platform, the Shadow Server Foundation, reports that since last month, an attack network that has grown to include 2.8 million IP addresses per day has been involved in a coordinated brute force password attack on VPN gateways, firewalls, and other internet-facing network devices. The attacking nodes are basically just trying random combinations of passwords, attempting to guess the credentials to get them into appliances from SonicWall, Palo Alto, Ivanti, and others. Currently, most of the tracking addresses are located in, wait for it, Brazil, Turkey, and Russia. What a surprise. And are associated with routers from MikroTik, Huawei, Cisco, and ZTE routers and IoT devices. So, yeah, that basically means the bad guys are compromising various networks and going after nodes using the stupidest but most effective possible approach, which is password guessing.
Yeah, brute forcing it too. And that makes me wonder if what they are doing is, I'm sure at the top of their list are the default passwords on these devices and sort of the easy 1, 2, 3, 4 XYZ kind of password combos. So if that's you, please go change them.
Yes, do not call your password, okay? And by the way, putting zeros instead of the O's is not better.
It doesn't count.
So, okay, Drew, over to you for the news.
All right, we'll start off with Cisco. They're announcing a new line of smart data center switches. They're built around Cisco's own 4.8 terabit per second Silicon One chip as its central processor, and it's augmented by a programmable data processing unit, or DPU, from AMD Pensando. The idea is that the DPUs offload some of the data processing grunt work from the Silicon One chip, making its resources available for AI and other large workloads. And organizations can also deploy services such as firewalling directly onto the switch running on that DPU. So you can do things like add security features faster and easier, and you can enforce policies closer to actual workloads. It also theoretically reduces the need to deploy separate hardware such as a dedicated firewall, but we'll talk more about that in a bit. I just wanted to give you a little background. Pensando was started by former Cisco engineers and then was acquired by AMD in 2022 for $1.9 billion. I think Cisco also was an investor early in the Pensando startup, so they're finally getting it back into their platform. Yeah.
That's a typical Cisco move, is if it looks promising, we'll invest. So yes.
And I'll also note Cisco isn't the first to put a DPU in a switch. HPE has offered its CX 10000 series switch, which also includes the same AMD Pensando DPU that I think is going into these new Cisco switches. Since 2021, the CX 10000 already supports features like NAT and IPsec encryption that are going to still be forthcoming from Cisco. If you know of other switch platforms out there also running the AMD Pensando DPU, let me know. packetpush.net/FU.
Yeah, and coming back to the point of these DPUs, Cisco's mentioned that future services would be things like NAT, IPsec encryption, IPS IDS, and others. Its initial on-switch service offering will be a layer 4 application of its Hypershield architecture for stateful segmentation. So the importance here is that this is a great platform if you're interested in security and adding security onto these devices, onto these switches.
Yeah, and trying to read through that, I was like, what is Hypershield? And there's a lot to it, but I think the initial feature you're getting out of the box is essentially layer 4 firewalling that will run on the DPU.
Yeah, and that stateful segmentation is actually incredibly important because it's another way of saying dynamically deciding where the packets get to go and not go.
Yes.
Which is very useful in lots and lots of scenarios. The main issue with doing anything dynamically is it can't happen fast enough, but in an architecture like this, it can.
Yeah. I'll note that the DPUs support 800 gig of throughput. John, I'm curious, do you feel like this architecture of having extra processors on a switch to do things like firewalling makes sense?
Absolutely. This is a no-brainer design. I'm surprised that Cisco took this long to develop it. But in fact, weirdly enough, you see this even in biological systems where you'll have processing pushed off to sort of local but close support. So it's actually a very solid architecture. It's a great way to implement security at scale and at speed. So delighted to see it here.
I ask because, Cisco's rolling this out now in 2025. HPE has had this capability since 2021, but it doesn't seem like there's been a lot of market uptake. I don't know if that's because people are still a little bit wary about this design or just because HP doesn't really have that huge presence in the switch market.
I'm going with the latter, absolutely. I suspect Cisco will make great hay with this because A, they have the marketing presence and they will go around and tell everybody why this is a good thing, and B, it's coming from Cisco. So, there's a certain, I actually just read a quote that was fascinating. It was an ancient Greek philosopher who said there was a group of ancient Greeks who refused to follow a good idea proposed by a bad person until a good person had proposed it first. Not that I'm calling HPE bad in the slightest, but the idea that something has to be validated by a trusted market player is, not nuts.
Yes, not making moral judgments here. Just there is something to that. Yeah, interesting. A couple more details here. Cisco has announced 2 models so far. The first is the N9 9300 Smart Switch, shipping in the spring of 2025. The switch offers 24 ports of 100 gig and runs on Cisco Silicon One E10 ASIC and the AMD Pensando GPU. Cisco also says it's going to roll out a top-of-rack model with 6 400 gig ports, 200 gig ports, and 48 25 gig ports. Look for that in the summer of 2025. We have a ton of links to details about this and other stuff that will be in the show notes that accompany this podcast.
And moving along, Cisco also has news from its acquisition ThousandEyes, where it's talking a little bit about traffic insights. Drew, what's going on here?
Yeah, so ThousandEyes started off doing like internet performance monitoring. They've also started to roll out capabilities to monitor your on-prem networks. They're now announcing a private preview of what they're calling Traffic Insights. Traffic Insights can automatically correlate net flow data and synthetic tests to help you identify the root cause of a problem more quickly. If you want this service, you need to have ThousandEyes agent software deployed in your network. Agents can be deployed directly on Cisco network devices or as physical or virtual appliances, and the agents conduct synthetic tests and collect flow records. You can also send flows from a third-party collector to these agents. All of this data then gets sent up to the ThousandEyes cloud for analysis, and engineers can use the cloud portal to see what's going on. And again, the private preview is available to current ThousandEyes customers.
Which I think this makes sense. It's a smart extension of the platform, and there's a lot of useful data in those flow records, including, well, who's communicating with whom, what protocols they're using, how much bandwidth they're consuming, and so forth and so on. And the ability to blend in those, synthetic transactions means you're actually able to do a little bit of what ifs here and kind of do some predictive planning.
Yeah, I guess one way to think about it is the net flow is sort of always running, and it's kind of a passive monitoring system with these synthetic tests. If you actually want to go test the performance of something right now, you can just run the test or have the test scheduled to run at regular intervals. And you're getting that like end-to-end and hop-by-hop performance, which I guess when correlated with NetFlow data could be very informational.
So let me correct myself a little bit, because with the synthetic test, you're actually not able to generate synthetic traffic in this model yet.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually over-assuming on this. So for the benefits of those who are listening, synthetic testing, not synthetic traffic generation just yet.
Right, synthetic tests.
Still value, still adds value.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well, moving along on the general theme of traffic, DE-CIX New York is going 400 gig. DE-CIX is one of the world's largest IXs, Internet Exchange Operators. They announced plans to upgrade the backbone in the New York Interexchange, which is the largest interexchange in the U.S. Northeast region, to 400 gigabits per second Ethernet. It'll be deploying Nokia gear for the project, laying the groundwork for 800 gig upgrades later on. The upgrade is to accommodate increased demand and better meet the large customers who are already deploying 400 gig themselves. So basically, if people are bringing 400 gig traffic already, you pretty much have to upgrade to handle it. They're expecting to finish the upgrade in June, according to the CTO, Thomas King.
I'm guessing they're starting with New York because there's a lot of financial services who want to process things as quickly as possible. Is that?
I'm going to go with large customers, including financial services. But if you think about what's going on in New York, there's pretty much everything, including the hyperscalers, all have
hyperscalers, entertainment. Yeah.
Exactly.
Banking,
exactly. So yeah, it's very interesting when you look at the density, the bandwidth density of various geographies. And you realize, obviously the Washington, D.C. area is incredibly dense, but so is New York.
I'll note that it's like a nice win for Nokia. They've been trying to raise their profile in the Ethernet space. People just sort of assume they're just routers, but they do have a pretty good Ethernet portfolio. And just caveat, we do have a sponsored Tech Bytes with Nokia, and so that's not why I'm saying this. I do think it's true that Nokia does have these products and is trying to raise its profile, particularly in the Ethernet space.
Yeah, and I think honestly, being able to do stuff that fast is a big deal. Full stop.
400 gigs.
This is not hard. Right.
Right. All right. Sticking with networking, Juniper has announced the EX4000 Ethernet switch line for campus networks. The new line ranges from 8 to 48 ports, has PoE and non-PoE models, and can tie into Juniper's wired access AIOps capabilities. Juniper's also touting features such as fast boot times under 2 minutes and perpetual PoE. That is, even if the switch control plane goes down or the switch has to reboot, devices connected to the switch will still have that power. So if you have to reboot the switch, you also don't have to reboot the APs connected to it. Juniper's positioning the EX4000 line as an upgrade to its EX2300 family. John, my assumption is here that as Wi-Fi 7 is rolling out, Juniper's also seeing an opportunity to get folks to upgrade their wired switches.
I think that's true. It's also, the timing is actually quite good because there is a bit of a return to office push, which means the demand for campus networking is probably going to spike a little bit compared to what it has been for the past couple of years. So these are all good things.
Yeah. And of course, because this is a Juniper product, it does come with AIOps capabilities. That includes things like dynamic packet captures, automated alerts on common networking issues such as misconfigured VLAN tags, cable faults, network performance problems. And if you sign on for Juniper's Marvis network service, that's an additional sign-on. You can interact with the Marvis chatbot using natural language to ask questions, kick off remediations, and get help doing things like searching documentation.
And if you are actually using that, can you please reach out to us at packetpushers.net/follow-up, because I am very curious how useful this truly is. Some of it looks like it could be really, really useful, like getting the help searching the documentation. Other features, not so much. But I could be wrong. So that's why I'm asking. So if you're listening and you are using Marvis and you like it, hate it, we don't have to say who you are. You don't even have to leave your information, but we would be very curious to hear what you think.
Yeah, I know there are a lot of Marvis fans out there, so we may be getting a lot of contacts, but that's fine. Love to get it. packetpushers.net/FU. And Jonna, maybe after the show, I can put you in touch with a couple of folks.
Oh, yeah, no, that would be great.
Moving on, SolarWinds is once again going private. Folks know SolarWinds as a network monitoring and observability platform. It's been sold to a private equity firm, Turn/River Capital, for $4.4 billion in cash. And Jonna, I guess you're giggling because we also know it for something else.
Oh, no, I'm actually giggling because the last time it went private was in 2016. So it's like, well, it's going private again, going public again, going private again. Of course, we know it for the massive catastrophic breach that it suffered. So I think I'm actually, my secret suspicion is whether they're going to try to rename and rebrand it this time around, but who knows?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, SolarWinds went private back in 2016. It was acquired by private equity firms Silver Lake and Thoma Bravo for $4.5 billion in an all-cash deal. So in 2016, they got $4.5 billion for it. In 2025, they're only getting $4.4 billion. It did return to the public market in 2018, where they managed to raise $375 million in an IPO. I will note that at present, Silver Lake and Thoma Bravo are SolarWinds' biggest shareholders, so they will probably get the majority of the cash coming out of this deal. And sticking with SolarWinds, they also recently announced their fiscal year 2024 financial results. They had $796 million in revenues for the year, up 5%. Net income was $112 million. 5% growth for the year, not bad, but I guess Silver Lake and Thoma Bravo are just looking to recoup their money a little faster.
Yeah, I think that's probably the case. And also, reputationally tarnished, obviously, as we know. And who knows? I mean, it can get turned around, although, private equity deals are not necessarily great for investment or growth in technology or employees. It may just be that the new PE firm is hoping to pull some revenue from SolarWinds as legacy software that's kind of hard to jettison. So it may just be a, continue to milk the customers for a while play.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, all the verbiage coming out of SolarWinds that it's great and it's an investment and they'll do grand new things with it, but we will have an opportunity to see. Sticking with financial results, we'll go to Juniper Networks. Their proposed acquisition by HPE is currently being blocked by the U.S. Justice Department, so Juniper's back to reporting financial results. They did their Q4 and fiscal year 2024 financial results. For the quarter, the company had revenues of $1.4 billion, up 3% year over year, and net income of $162 million, up 30% year over year. For the full year, Juniper revenues were just over $5 billion, down 9% from last year, and a net income of $288 million, down 7% year over year. I think because of the still pending acquisition, Juniper didn't hold an investor conference call and didn't offer any guidance for Q1 2025. But I did note in the press release that accompanies the results, CEO Rami Rahim is quoted as saying, "We saw double-digit order growth in our enterprise and service provider verticals, complement another quarter of triple-digit year-over-year growth in our cloud vertical." So I guess while full-year results were down, they did have a pretty good Q4, and we'll see if the company can maintain that momentum going into 2025, while they also have to fight the Justice Department.
Yeah, and I think, HPE obviously is going to be putting on a pretty hard fight there, so we'll see how that comes out.
Yeah, lots to watch. Our last story for this episode, security vendor Fortinet also released Q4 and full year 2024 results. For the quarter, Fortinet earned revenues of $1.6 billion, up 17% year over year, and net income of $526.2 million, well up over last year. For the full year, revenues were $5.96 billion, up 12.3% versus last year, and net income of $1.75 billion, also up over the previous year. I guess my general takeaway is that these are good results and they sort of align with the overall robustness of the security market. But in looking at the press release a little more closely, I noticed that for full year 2024, service revenue was $4 billion, while product revenue was just $1.9 billion. To me, that says Fortinet's doing very well at extracting money from existing customers, maybe doing less well in bringing new customers on board or selling them new gear. I don't know, am I reading into that too much?
It depends on how they're defining service revenue, obviously, because there's lots of different ways to define it. It may just simply be that they're, if it's more cloud-based, that could be new customers.
Sure, that's true.
So, yeah, and I went back and sort of a quick and dirty comparison is to look at revenue versus net income. If it's some kind of, services from the standpoint of professional services or something else, usually net income goes down or doesn't go up as quickly as revenues because the cost is greater. But it seems like they're basically increasing income, increasing revenues, which means their cost structure is great. So whatever they're doing, I think they're doing fine.
They are doing fine.
So, Yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about it. I don't think we can extrapolate into new versus existing customers from just that.
Okay.
You may be right, but I'm not sure from the data that we have. We can
Absolutely
say that.
fair. Yeah, for sure. All right, well, that wraps up the news portion. Please do stay tuned for our sponsored Tech Bytes podcast with Nokia. We're going to get a taste of its EDA data center automation software. That's coming right up. Nokia's Event-Driven Automation, or EDA, is a network automation platform that aims to help network engineers achieve predictable, error-free operations so you can keep up with all the change tickets coming your way while ensuring the data center is reliable and performant. On today's Tech Bytes podcast, sponsored by Nokia, we're going to talk about how EDA uses intent-based networking and Kubernetes to build a digital twin of your production network to help you test changes and run pre- and post-checks so you get a rock-solid, reliable data center network. Our guest is Andy Laptev, Senior Product Marketing Manager of Data Center at Nokia, and many of our listeners will recognize Andy's voice as he is a co-host of the Art of Network Engineering podcast. Andy, welcome to the show. You recently joined Nokia. I'm just curious, as a network engineer, what was your exposure to the company prior to being employed by them?
Hey guys, thanks for having me. It's awesome to be here. This is like a dream come true. I'm on Packet Pushers. Yay. Listen, I had no idea Nokia was in the networking space, right? Let alone the data center space. I spent a decade managing data center WAN environments, and there's three big names that we all think about. You know, I'm not going to say them out loud, but three vendors pretty much own that market. So I didn't know Nokia was in the space. And my first exposure to Nokia was when Mike Bouchon announced on LinkedIn he was going there. I'm like, okay, that's an interesting move. But Mike's a smart guy, so interested to see how this goes. Around the same time of Mike's announcement, I was interviewing for a role at my dream logo, right? Another company name we won't mention, but Tom Hollingsworth around that time invited me to be a delegate at NFD exclusive with Nokia. It was this all day event where they
Network Field Day, yeah.
Yeah, Network Field Day. I had been there before. It was great. So I'm like, yeah, sure, let's do this. And I'm a curious person by nature. So like at that event, they started to say things that were like, they started to get my attention, right? So like, I'll just walk you quickly through what I learned there. I learned they have a complete hardware portfolio, right? Didn't know that. Tomahawk, Trident, Jericho platforms, like all the speeds and feeds everybody has. Like, okay, cool, you'd expect that. Kind of what got my attention was their mission critical network. So I learned that like a lot of the world's mission critical infrastructure is built on Nokia networks. Think like air traffic control, train signaling, power grids, networks that have to be reliable, right? Like networks whose failures mean people could be hurt or worse. So they got my attention there. I'm like, okay. Nokia, this sounds pretty cool. It did not sound like production networks I've managed, right? Thinking back to my prod days, no matter how hard we tried, reliability was very hard to create and come by. Another thing they talked about at Network Field Day was their software quality. It is, the most modern NOS. They say it has all this embedded telemetry. It's orders of magnitude better than competition if you look at CVEs as a proxy for quality. So it starts to make sense. Like, okay, you need high quality hardware, great software to deliver reliable networks, mission critical, okay. And the way they framed the problem I thought was interesting. So if you guys will play along for a minute, I'm going to ask you two quick questions.
Sure.
What time of year are networks most stable?
Holidays.
Christmas.
Why are networks most stable during the holidays?
No change windows.
We don't mess with them, exactly.
We don't mess with them, exactly. So as an industry, right, we're complicit in building out a discipline where our stuff works best when everybody goes home and stops touching it. It's a little embarrassing, okay? There was a report in Uptime Intelligence that they had talked about. They looked at 25 years of data and determined that 2/3 of network outages are caused by human error. That's a lot of mistakes. I know I've made plenty of them in production. Again, my friend Mike Bouchon joked there that if we built airplanes like we built networks, he would walk everywhere and he would always be looking up for falling airplanes. That man is a wordsmith, right? But this is the problem that they wanted to solve. What Nokia decided to address the safety issue. If we want to make networking as safe as the aviation industry, there's a couple lessons we can learn. Redundant everything, right? 2 engines, 2 pilots, checklists. I don't know if you've ever been on a plane, right? Walking by the pilot, but they have all these checklists they go through to make sure that the plane is right before they go do the thing. And if you see all the dials and things on the wall in front of them, they have real access to fine grain telemetry. Like, how is the system working in real time? What is happening? So kind of where they wrapped up. And again, now I'm completely, enraptured by the story that they're telling me. They say, if we apply these lessons from the aviation industry to the networking operations space, that is fraught with peril, right? We know this. We can drive safety, remove fragility in networks, and make changes to our networks without breaking them. We don't all have to stop touching everything to make our network stable. And if networks aren't fragile, we can move fast with confidence. I know that's a lot of words, but I had no idea Nokia was in networking. I went to NFD. They told me what I just told you. And I'm like, oh my God, I need to know more.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons you're here, because now you're working for Nokia and you're out to let folks know that, yes, Nokia is a player in data center networking. And the specific topic is event-driven automation, or EDA. And what is that?
Network automation. Hopefully you haven't followed me anywhere publicly and heard me complain about network automation over the years. Because
I know your complaints, because you said, I don't want to become a programmer just to automate my network.
Listen, there's probably a reason that, less than 30% of the industry has really adopted network automation. And I know through the network automation forum that, this conversation has been happening and it's really good. So I guess, again, at NFD, when I saw EDA, so what is it? Nokia's event-driven automation, or EDA. It's a cloud-native automation platform whose goal is to drive human error zero. We talked about 2/3 of outages caused by humans. The problem we wanted to solve is, let's drive human error to zero. Let's stop, let's create networks that we can touch without them falling over all the time. It's designed to ensure reliability, simplicity. The extensibility part's kind of cool. It's a very open kind of philosophy where if you are a super coder person, you can create your own functionality in there, and in an app store they have that we'll probably talk about a little later. But it focuses on, predictable and error-free operations. It does things like pre-checks, post-checks, intent automation. There's a built-in digital twin. Hello. I never was able to test my changes. My tests were hit the return button at 2:00 in the morning and pray, right? So confidence was always relative when I was managing networks, and we never knew if a change was going to blow up our networks or not. I was the intelligent decision maker, and I had little insight into state, and I couldn't test changes. So I love that EDA gives network operators the not only visibility into the state of the network, which again, I never felt like I had. We were very reactive. When Spectrum would blow up or the phone would ring because customers were mad, that's when we start looking. With all this built-in rich telemetry that EDA brings in, you can see the state of the network, and then the event-driven part, you can build in workflows so that if thing happens, do other thing. I could literally sleep through an event that would be auto-mitigated with EDA. So
EDA is a system by which I, as a network engineer, can implement changes on the network. It feels like a framework. I was thinking it was more like a reactionary system that could do the last bit of what you just said there. Oh, something happened, take this action. And that's in there, but this is way bigger than that.
It is. And something I failed to mention is the natural language ability it has. I know everybody's baking AI into everything, right? But I will tell you that I saw at the demo at Networking Field Day, you can ask your infrastructure in natural language any question you want, just like I talk to my 10-year-old son, and it will respond to me and give me answers. We were at NFD, and they said, just as a joke, show me all interfaces with Riz. Now, I don't know if you know this new fangled terminology the kids are using, but Riz means cool. And EDA translated that as up, right? So show me all interfaces with Riz, and it showed me. Not that any network engineer would ever do that, but you can ask it ridiculous, skibbity, whatever Riz, and it will know what you're talking about because it's
I'm not sure this is an advancement, but yes, I see the value of a system you can query with natural language. So you said a couple of things, and I also said, cloud native and Kubernetes, but we're talking about my on-prem data center. What is the cloud component? And does this mean data is going somewhere from my switches up to the cloud?
So EDA is gathering streaming telemetry, and I'll be honest with you, I am not streaming telemetry expert, right? I know it's using GNMI, there's gRPC. These are a lot of things that I'm not aware of, I didn't have access to in my tooling, but it's gathering streaming telemetry. What is it gathering? Faults, TCAM usage, control plane insights, fabric workload, right? Where does it go? EDA is a Kubernetes-based environment, so it can be on-prem, it can be in the cloud, anywhere you can run Kubernetes. I have it running on my MacBook, right? Wherever you can run Kubernetes is where this would go. There's a state aggregator that gives you a uniform interface, and you can query like we talked about earlier, and ask, the state of your network, what's happening. And it's really compelling when you see it.
So this isn't a SaaS service per se. This is something I can run on-prem if I want, but it's using cloud-native constructs like Kubernetes to build this software application.
You can run it on-prem. You can run it in the cloud. And there is, I don't know if this has been officially released, and I don't know if my friend on the call will yell at me, but there is a SaaS solution now where it is a fully hosted EDA environment that you can leverage as well. So whether you want to run it in your own cloud environment, on-prem, or leverage the SaaS environment, it's all there.
What network operating systems are supported? Are we talking about just Nokia's SR Linux or other ones too?
Multi-vendor, right? Every environment I've worked in has been multi-vendor. So what is supported? Nokia's SR Linux, obviously, right? That's their NOS. There is planned support for Sonic soon. And I believe there is one other vendor on the roadmap, either Cisco or Arista. I don't know which, and I don't know when, but that is coming. So this is for hybrid environments. And kind of another cool thing that I think I should mention is because of the open nature, there's an app store. So EDA sees every functionality as an application or an app. So just like you would go in your iPhone or Android app store and grab something, EDA sees a fabric as an app, right? So if you don't like EDA's opinions on what a fabric is, and you're a coder guru, you can write your own fabric app. I believe it's in Python. I might be corrected. And put it right in the app store and pull it in for yourself. If there is a functionality in a vendor that EDA doesn't support, you can make it yourself and integrate it in there. So I love this kind of like open, extensible Kubernetes, cloud native thing going on, because it's all very new to me, and I haven't seen that in other places.
Well, give us an example. Are we talking like, I want to build a, I don't know, leaf spine network. I can pull an app down that'll hook into EDA and help me create that network?
Yeah, everything's an app, and all the state is bubbled up into the apps. So, we'll have to do a demo sometime with you guys in a future one, but they show, again, I keep going back to NFD, but that was my experience, my first experience with it. And it was pretty amazing. Everything that EDA is doing is in an app. It's all coded in apps. It's modular. You can pull them in and out. You can create your own, which I just think is really neat.
So in the Nokia ecosystem, then, is this feels like intent-based networking? Does that mean there's like a Nokia language I have to learn to express what I'm looking for?
So there's no language. Like, I'm a traditional, what Scott Roban would call a trad NetOps person. Again, we started with I don't love the coding, right? Listen, I've done a little bit of Python. I've done some things because everyone's telling me I have to, but I don't like it. So for a trad person like myself, I have a no code solution, the GUI. I can go in, I forget if it's 5 or 6 button clicks. You can click 5 buttons, fill out a very simple form, create a fabric, thousands of lines of configs are generated, and you have your state instantly, and you can see what's happening. If you're one of those, Kubernetes cloud native super nerds who want to interact, with YAML, have at it. The coders among us can extend the capabilities like we talked about by writing their own apps in the App Store. But yeah, you don't need coding, but if you're a coder, you can really extend the functionality in the app and import it into the App Store.
So you mentioned that EDA is creating a digital twin of the production data center. Can you talk more about that? What do you mean by that? Because there's, I think, multiple versions of digital twin floating around the industry.
It's something I wish I had in production and never did. we were talking before we recorded about our worst stories and all the fun that we have in maintenance windows as network engineers. So the digital twin is providing an emulation of your production network, right? Again, something I didn't have. We used to ask for labs to simulate our production network, and it just wasn't in the budget, and it was really hard to emulate that in software. The digital twin emulates your production. It'll show you configuration state. It'll show you routing behavior, like BGP, VPN, streaming telemetry. It stays synchronized, so the telemetry bubbles up. It tells you what's happening in your environment, and if you want to test a change, I forget what it's exactly called in there, but you can load up your change. It's not a commit. It's probably dry run. I might be messing up the terms, but you click that functionality and it'll do its magic and let you know whether this is safe or not. Again, much like those checklists we talked about in aviation, it will do all those pre-checks and intent and, you know, all the EDA magic that it does that I don't fully understand because these people are brilliant and I just work here. But yeah, you're able to test a change before you push it to prod. And man, that sounds really good to me because I didn't have that and I wish I did.
The idea being you can push a change in this digital twin and see what the results are, see if something breaks, see if something opens that you didn't mean to open or so on.
Yeah, like, oh, I pushed that change and my whole fabric disappeared. Again, we're not trashing anyone here or telling war stories, but I may have been involved in a maintenance years ago where we pushed a change and all of our fabrics completely disappeared and it was like a 7-hour outage. I won't get into why and how, but we didn't have a twin to test what we were doing. We thought it was good and we went through all the change management and the peer reviews and all the things we do for people who don't have digital twins. And then we pushed the button in a window and oh my God, many people were upset.
Less dramatic for me was a change window where I couldn't get past bringing this firewall online because I'd forgotten to do something very fundamental. Set the zones. I never set my zones, so no traffic was flowing through this box, and I couldn't figure out why for the life of me. Digital twin would have caught that.
Or that silly, you know, add VLAN to a trunk thing that we've all done at least once. I forget what the command is. It's been a while, but if you don't do the syntax exactly right, that's the only VLAN that's on the trunk and everything else is gone. So yeah, it's really nice to be able to use intelligent systems to feed our ideas to them and then let us know whether it's a good idea or not and if we're going to break all the things. So that's the theory behind the digital twin.
So Andy, we're going to wrap on this. You sort of touched on it, but if I am a network engineer, a trad engineer who's a little skeptical of network automation or maybe intimidated by what looks more like software development, is Ada for me, or do I need to be the Kubernetes, YAML, whatever dude to embrace this?
Ada is designed for network engineers first, not just software developers. Every automation platform I've used prior to this felt like it was built for software people. And I'm like, oh my God, look at all this stuff. So you don't need Kubernetes expertise. It abstracts all those complexities away. Go in the GUI if you want to. You don't need to write YAML or Python. Again, you can go to the GUI if you want. If you want to go crazy, you can. If you're comfortable with, you know, netconf, JSON, CLI-based workflows, Ada provides familiar interfaces. If you want to go deeper, it supports advanced customization, CI/CD pipelines, GitOps scripting, but I am a trad NetOps guy. I can click buttons in a GUI and I can be happy. And that's my story.
Well, that does wrap up our time. Andy, thanks for joining us. Where should folks go if they want to find out more about Ada?
Thanks again for having me. It was fantastic. You can go to nokia.com, search event-driven automation, and get all of our information there.
All right. We'll also have links in the show notes if you're looking for more specifics, but that's nokia.com and just search event-driven automation. Andy, thanks for joining us. It's great to talk to you. And thanks to you, the listener, for also being here. If you like this episode, there are many more fine, free technical podcasts and our community blog. It's all at packetpushers.net. You can follow us now on Blue Sky. That's at Packet Pushers. You can hear us on Spotify. And if you would leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts. And last but not least, remember that too much networking, trad or otherwise, would never be enough.